to Across the Pond WNBA podcast. My name is Michelle Snow. Our other co host, James Scott, is going to allow me, he must really not know what he's doing, let me run the show. So while he's out, I want you guys to sit down and prepare for a fun show. We got a lot of things to talk about today. Our run of show today is going to include you know, like the first round game between the Aces and the Liberties. As many of you know, these are the two teams that a lot of people have dubbed as the champions of the 2023 season. So we're going to dig into what that first game looked like and all the expectations moving forward for both teams. We're also going to talk about the All Star game that landed in Las Vegas, tell you all about the announcements, what's going to happen during that All Star weekend, as well as who will be representing the WNBA for both teams, as well as the two team captains who were able to pick their own teams. We're also going to talk a little later about who got snubbed. The next thing we're going to talk about is we have a coach's spotlight on James Wade, and he's a personal friend, great coach. So I'm really excited to kind of share a huge bit of news that he has and how that also will translate into the Chicago Skies season moving forward. We're going to jump into that a little later. And there's always going to be some gossip. There's always somebody that wants to kind of have those Twitter battles. And we have one this week. Enes Kanter, former NBA player, Boston Celtic, who also lived in the US for a decade, is going to we're going to talk about him in the Twitter battle between Natasha Cloud and how that affects the outlay of Twitter, social media, social advocacy, and are they both saying the same thing just from different points of views? Are their hearts in the right place? We're going to talk about that later. As I said, we had someone that was snubbed with the WNBA All-Star this year, and they are outright calling it out. They are saying that they're upset, they are mad, and they decided to drop 43 to remind the league and their fellow players who they are. We're going to talk about who that player is later in the episode. The other thing we're going to talk about is Ryan Howard and how she has kind of evolved her second year, what that looks like, and what the expectations are for her moving forward as well. That's a lot that we're going to be talking about today. So let's jump right in. The first thing we wanted to talk about was the Aces versus the Liberty. Guys, if you did not see this game, jump on and watch the replay. It's kind of like the battle of the bands when you think of colleges. These two teams have what it takes. They've made great offseason moves in terms of player acquisitions. When you look at the Aces bringing in Candace Parker, for one, I think that was a great ad. And then Alicia Clark, who many people know, she knows how to fit into a team and get things done, whatever they may be. She understands and loves being that defensive player that stops people and just brings teams together with her leadership as well as her court intellect in terms of knowing what needs to be done, being able to do it, and making her team better in all of those small areas that make championship teams. Also, Candace Parker. If you need me to explain her stats, something is wrong anyway. She's a beast to add to any team. She's already won 2 championships with 2 different teams. I'm sorry, 3. But we're going to talk kind of her LA journey, her Chicago Sky journey, and what she can do to kind of bring this home with a third team here with the Las Vegas Aces and what that would do to her legacy. But when you flip the script and look at the New York Liberty and what they're doing, wow. Sandy Brondello said it would be 5 years. We said, that's the normal time span. I guess she put the clock on that bad boy and sped it up and made some key trades in this offseason, bringing in Mama Steph, bringing in Brianna Stewart. You got Courtney Vandersloot. You have Kayla Thornton as another person that they've added to this roster. Then when you look at Sabrina, who is already on this team, they have what it takes to really do something special. I think that's why this matchup was so exciting to watch, is you kind of got to see where they were in terms of, can this young team actually win a WNBA championship after all the moves that it made. And the best way to see if they can, put them up against the defending champions. And when we did that, guys, the game was amazing. When I looked at the stats and some of the things that came across in the game, there were a few things that were kind of interesting when you looked at that game because it ended up being an 81-98 Las Vegas Aces win. This is the first round. They have three more games to play before the season ends. We have to remember that it's early in the season. Some of the things that I noticed personally was the third quarter. That's kind of when the Aces took control, decided that it was their game. They kind of came out of the locker room after that first half and really just put the pedal to the metal. I'm talking about in terms of how they ran in transition, the secondary break, even in terms of how they played as a team overall was pretty interesting. I thought both teams, this is something that's going to go down this season, is the unselfish play of both of these teams. They seem to understand what it takes to kind of get their teammates involved, to make sure the ball is moving. They understand how to move and they have the roles of each teammate down. And in a way, you can tell that they truly respect each other and believe in each other. You see that with the Liberty, who leads the league in assists across the board. And then you see the Aces, who come in at number two with assists. I think the biggest difference in this particular game in their first matchup was a few things. I think you see the veteran leadership and what happens when you put a team of veterans together who've been playing for a long time in the WNBA, have maybe played on multiple teams, and they have an advantage in terms of understanding the way the game is played because the WNBA game is very different from the college game. So you have New York, which has a mixture of, they have veterans too, especially with the offseason trades. They have a mixture of veterans and youth. So those younger players are still getting used to the league. They're still understanding the pace of the game. The season this year is going to 40 games, so there's more games in a shorter span of time for some of these young players who are still getting their legs under them and understanding how to come out and play back to back versus how you would play in a college season, which, you might have a couple of games a week, and the league is very different. It's every other day, sometimes, back to back. So that's one of the things I look at with New York. And don't get it twisted now. Sandy Rondella is the right person for the job in terms of getting them ready, bringing in that veteran leadership to remind them of what the goals are, to keep them consistent night in and night out. And I think as they continue to grow, play in the league, mesh, they're going to get better and better as the season goes on. When you look at the Aces, you have a team that's in place that already knows what it takes to win. They brought in people who know what it takes to win to add to that space. Alicia Clark knows what it takes. Candace Parker knows what it takes. So now you got a nice little lineup there, including, they're not as deep in their bench this year as they have been in the past. And I think that's going to be what I would love to see moving forward. All five of those starters on that team were in double figures. They all played more than 30 minutes or right around or more than 30 minutes. I noticed on New York, most of those players are playing between 25 and 28 minutes, giving them the time to rest, get their legs underneath them. I don't know if, depending on their strategy moving forward, whether New York will have to play more minutes. And we don't know if the Las Vegas Aces, who are playing 30 plus minutes, have to work on getting that bench to a place where they can take some of that time off of their veteran players as well so they don't wear them down. And there's always that third piece, injuries. There are things that we can't control. And it's one of the things that you hope everything goes right. You want everything to go right. And I think staying healthy is big for both of those teams. Staying healthy, buying into the philosophy that both coaches have implemented. I thought Becky Hammond after the game made an amazing point. She said they're not looking to say that, because they won this game so definitively, and because they were up by 27 points at one point, that they have what it takes to win that championship, and that this game proves that they're the go-to team. I thought it was really smart as a coach to make sure she kept her team level, reminded them that this is early in the season. This team is still meshing. They're young. They will get better. And also just reminding her team as well as the media that although you may have teams that are stacked that are expected to win, like we saw in the NBA playoffs this year, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll make it. There are many other factors that go into that, from your 3-point shooting percentage, which they were pretty close on. Field goal percentage, Vegas stepped up and got it to about 60%. You had New York right under 50%. So I think that was a difference. I think Vegas being able to get into the paint and dominate in that area and get the easier buckets faster, whether that was in transition or the secondary break, was huge. And I thought the biggest measure was when we looked at the assists. It was interesting because I found that I think New York is going to have to figure out a way when it comes to assists, because they're great at that, is how to do that without turning the ball over, because they had a ton of turnovers. And I think that's what led to the transition and the secondary points. And it also led to the Aces being able to get out on a run, because once they stepped on the neck, got into that running game, which they love, it was really hard for New York to come back. So I think both coaches are correct in how they're seeing things, how they want to move forward in terms of what they do with their teams. Sandy Brondello now has to fill in the gaps of, how do we stop the Aces in transition? How do we stop the secondary break? How do we make sure we're contesting every single shot so that they're not shooting 60% from the field? So it's going to be a ton of fun to watch these two teams battle it out. They're amazing, and we're going to have a lot of fun. I would love to hear from you guys who you think is going to win game two, and ultimately, if one of these two teams is your choice for WNBA 2023 champions. Just throw it down in the comments. And of course, I'm going to put my 2 cents right underneath it. But in our next story, as we move on from the Aces and the New York Liberty, we wanted to talk about the 2023 WNBA All-Star Game. I think it is absolutely amazing that we're going to have this game played in Las Vegas at the Michelob Ultra Arena. This is important for 2 reasons. You have the defending champions, the Las Vegas Aces, that are going to be there. They have a lot of players that are going to be in this All-Star game. It will be this Saturday, July the 15th at 5:30 Pacific time. And the centerpiece of these 2 days is, of course, the All-Star game. I think another piece of it is the fan interaction, where they get to come in and be a part of the team, see the culture, the entertainment, and the intersection of those 2 things with the WNBA, and getting to kind of meet some of your favorite players. So as we know, the Las Vegas Aces are excited to host this. Their president, Nikki Fargas, was just saying how they get to host the league's signature showcase in the sports and entertainment capital of the world. And if you have not been to Vegas, if you have not experienced an All-Star game in Vegas, get your tickets if at all possible. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. If you've been to a Vegas game, you know the atmosphere there is electric. So they're coming off of the championship. Now they're actually coming into the All-Star game. And to make it even more special, the icing on the cake is that on Friday, July 14th, some of the biggest and brightest stars are going to display their talents in the WNBA Starry 3-point contest and the Kia WNBA Skills Challenge. This is going to be fun because you get to see the players showcase what they can do from the 3-point line, as well as showing what they can do in terms of assists, dribbling, and all the cool little skills challenges that they'll have for this season. But the big one is going to be the actual All-Star game this year. And the 2 players that are actually leading the way in terms of that WNBA All-Star game, you have on one side of the field, Asia Wilson, who's choosing Team Wilson. Then on the other side, you have Brianna Stewart, who is choosing Team Stewart. So I thought this was a ton of fun for them to take on that format. They do the same thing in the NBA. And both of them as all-star captains, I think is important because they finished at the top of the fan votes. So allowing them to kind of choose their teams is fun. I thought it was really cool that 2 of Asia Wilson's teammates for the Aces, Chelsea Gray and Jackie Young, were named in her starting lineup, with also former South Carolina standout and rookie Aaliyah Boston, and the wings Arike Agumbawale was finished that out. Now, when we looked at Breanna Stewart and who she chose and which teammates she found, first thing out was Brittany Griner, huge pick. Jewel Lloyd, a beast of a teammate. Satu Sabali, and then you got Nneka Agumake rounding out her starting five. When we look at the full roster of who's going to be on these teams in LA, I think it's amazing to say that rounding out Asia Wilson and her teammates, Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, Aaliyah Boston. I think it's also important. Arika Gumboale, you got Kelsey Plum, uh, Alicia Gray, Alyssa Thomas, Cheyenne Parker, first time in an All-Star game. Really looking forward to seeing her get some of the league's best. Duana Bonner, who is showing out this year, and of course Elena Deladon in the post. I think we're going to have a heck of a game when we look at who they're going up against on the other side. Breanna Stewart with the Liberty. Brittany Griner is making her debut. I'm telling y'all, I think a dunk is coming. Maybe two or three. I'm gonna throw it out there. She's back. She's on the court. Everyone's excited to see her. I think this will be a fun All-Star game, especially with Brittany Griner in the mix. Jewel Lloyd, Satu Sabali, Nneka Agumake. You got Courtney Vandersloot that's showing up. Sabrina Ionescu, Ezzy Mag. I'm sorry, Ezra Magbagor. You got Nafizia Collier, Kelsey Mitchell is also going to be coming in for the Fever, and another one, Kalia Copper from the Sky, who we'll talk about a little later in terms of what's going on out there with the Sky with our coaches spotlight this week with James Ward. So these are our all-star teams. I think it's going to be a ton of fun because you got Magbagor, Parker. When I say Parker, Cheyenne Parker, Gray, and Mitchell, they're all playing in their first All-Star game. And then Boston, Aaliyah Boston from South Carolina, rookie this year, she's going to become the first rookie to start in an All-Star game since 2014. I think that's going to be a ton of fun to see her as a rookie come into her own for All-Star and go head-to-head with some of the best in the game. I think knowing that Brittany Griner was an honorary All-Star member last year, while she was detained, they still made sure they gave her that honorary mention for the All-Star game. I thought that was really big. Said a lot about what she means to the league, her teammates, coaches, and the organizations across the world. I think that's also why a lot of people are excited to see her play in this All-Star game and have a ton of fun. The game is going to begin at 5:30, as we said, on Saturday. That is Pacific Standard Time in the Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas. If you do not have your tickets, go get them. It is going to be a ton of fun. You're going to see a lot of amazing players in one arena, and it's going to be a showdown. You know, they're going to have the tunnel walk, and they're going to show out there. They're going to have the interaction with the fans on the 14th for that live engagement, and then on the 15th, they're going to put friendships aside and go to war with each other to see which team comes out on top. Team Stewart or Team Wilson? I love to know in the comments below who you think is going to walk away with the All-Star win for 2023. Team Wilson or Team Stewart? All right, guys. We've kind of talked about the All-Star game, the Aces and the Liberty game, that matchup, which was amazing last week. Now I want to get into our coaches spotlight with James Coco. He's a close friend, great coach, has done amazing things in the league. If you don't know who James Ward is, he is an amazing individual, an American French basketball coach who has had some exciting news in the past few days. He's someone that personally I have always watched go from working with players to assistant coaching to head coach to GM. So it's been an amazing journey for someone that was born in Memphis, Tennessee, going to Northside in Memphis for high school. Then he went to Middle Tennessee for college, Chattanooga State, and finished it up at Kennesaw State in Georgia. Was drafted to the NBA in 1998. And when I say drafted, I should say he went undrafted, but still got into the NBA in 1998. So he is the type of person that shows us that persistence and dedication pay off. And he found a way to go and get the coaching experience from working with teams overseas on the women's side as an assistant coach, doing all types of things to make sure he could do what it takes to get the experience that he needed to not only coach on the floor, but actually do the role and hold that role as a GM at the same time. So making the moves of which players are going to make this team special in the offseason, how to bring players together that actually mesh well and that have the same drive, that are going to buy into your philosophy and understand what it takes to win. And he proved that, because if you do not know that as a head coach, he has already been the WNBA Coach of the Year in 2019. Then he was a WNBA champion in 2021 with the Chicago Sky. In 2022, he was the the WNBA Basketball Executive of the Year, which goes to show his general management skills of how he brought in so many talented players like Emma Measurement. You had Big Mama Steph, Courtney Vandersloot, Allie Quigley, Kalia Copper. You had Candace Parker. You had a team that was completely loaded. This team was amazing. And to watch them win that championship by defeating the Phoenix Mercury back in 2021 was amazing, because when you watch the strategy that he put in, you could tell that he cared about his team and that they cared about him, and they were willing to run through a wall to get that win for him. Now, with all of that said, with all of the accolades he started working and doing assistant work in San Antonio back in 2012. That's actually where I met him and got to know him. Then he went on with the Minnesota Lynx, made his way to the Chicago Sky. And I think that it is our role and job to congratulate him as the assistant coach of the Toronto Raptors of the NBA. This has been a dream of his for a very long time. He has put in the work and the dedication to get there and do that. He has brought the first championship to the city of Chicago. And if you guys have not seen the video of that championship parade, you need to go watch it. The city came out and embraced this team. It's been a long time since they've had a championship. So it was amazing to watch women of the WNBA get their flowers in front of the whole city. And he was the one that was leading a lot of that work. So definitely want to congratulate him on his new role. Looking forward to seeing what he does on the NBA side and wishing him the best of luck. The next piece of this that I want to talk about is Kalia Copper. I know there have been a lot of comments and articles. Now, the Chicago organization wishes him well. They knew what his goals and dreams were. He wanted to be a coach in the NBA, and he has finally made that happen. They gave kudos to him in every publication around his leadership, how he's brought teams together, his ability to be the coach and the GM at the same time. They've given him kudos for bringing that championship to Chicago. And then we always know there's a flip side to things where some people ask, well, did he leave the team in a better place or in a better position? And personally, for me, I think he did what he was supposed to do. He came, he broke all the different records from not just the coaching standpoint with championships, but also from an executive standpoint. He brought a lot of players together, and he also had a championship that came to that team. And I think at times we want things to stay the same, but things are constantly changing. He had the opportunity of a lifetime, and he should have taken it. It is no different than a team taking an opportunity to sign a key player and having to let go of some players that have been on that team for years to get the leverage to do so. I think we have to remember that it's a business both ways. With players and coaches, it's a business, and it's also a business with the organization. And I think James did everything that he was supposed to. He delivered on every single promise that he was supposed to. And he's also laid the blueprint for the Chicago Sky in terms of what works, how to make it work, who you need in each spot, and how to find teams that can come together and win championships. Hopefully, everyone else realizes that that is a blessing and that he didn't leave them without a roadmap. I think an interesting piece to point out is one of his closest players who's still in Chicago now, Kalia Copper. She's up for free agency at the end of this season. So as a player, there's a different point of view because she now is very focused on doing whatever it takes to make sure she positions herself for free agency. And she's being very matter of factly about it. Like, listen, I'm not going to worry about things I can't control. I know, her and James had a very strong relationship. It was almost as if the two of them could rebuild that franchise and she could be the player who led that. And I understand because I've been in those positions before as well. You always still want that person that got you that first championship to live out their dreams. And now she's put into a situation where she gets to lead the way, take on more responsibility, work with the new coach in terms of what that looks like, how it's looked in the past. And she has a ton of veteran leadership that we'll be able to see that will position her to be able to get what she wants in free agency, whether that's to stay in Chicago and build something there, get better facilities and all the things that she kind of mentioned in her article online. And once she can get those things done, I think there's an opportunity to build there, or she can also make a business decision to do what's best for her. Either way, both of them are in positions to live their dreams and control what happens as they move forward. Wishing both of them the best, excited to see what Chicago does, even though they have a whole new roster and everything. I think it will be interesting to see how the organization does this season, and the decisions that are made will be able to learn a lot about whether the philosophy or the roadmap that James left is followed, and also being able to bring people together and get them to win. Right now, I think their record is 8-7, I believe. So, not too shabby, but I think they still have a lot of games to be played. So it'll be really interesting to see how that transition affects them. And I think it's one that we should follow when you think about how it is a brand. You are a brand as a player, you are a brand as a coach. Same goes for teams. So I think it's something that everyone should watch. If you want to understand more about the business side of basketball and how it works, follow this team this season. Next up, we are going to talk about some of the tweets, the Twitter battle between Enes Kanter, former NBA Boston Celtic, who spent more than a decade here in the US, who also is facing, and he's got a lot that he's facing with Turkey after his decision to kind of speak out against some of the things he didn't believe in. And Natasha Cloud, who they've kind of been going back and forth on the internet, and I don't want to make up words. I like to read things verbatim, just so we're all hand to hand. But I'm gonna pull this up so that we can kind of talk through it. But Enes Kanter basically was responding to Natasha Cloud's tweet about America being trash. Mind you, her tweet was in response to the Supreme Court rulings that had hit earlier that week that have bothered a lot of people, just because in a country where we value freedom of speech, we value a lot of individual rights, some people felt that their rights were infringed upon and they were taken away. I know there's been issues around women in their bodies. There have been a lot of rulings lately that have made certain groups of people feel marginalized. I think as we read through like the comments, one of the things, it got really heated when Enes Kanter took to social media, and he kind of wrote, he said, and I'm reading it verbatim, still cannot understand how lucky and blessed they are to be in a country where you can say whatever you want to say and you're not going to jail. That comment hit me in so many different ways because through cultural immersion, through 16 years of playing in different countries, 5 of those in Russia, 4 in Turkey. So very familiar with what he's talking about. I did understand where he was coming from and what he was speaking on. Is there is a feeling around our ability to have freedom of speech and understanding what that means and how he feels we should respect it. And as he said, you know, it was no disrespect to her. It was just speaking out about something that personally he has had to go through. I think on the other end, Natasha Cloud spoke back and said, listen, I have respect for you and your lived experience in your country. And I would expect you to have the same respect for my lived experience as a Black gay woman in my country. And she added, you have no idea what it means to walk my journey or anyone else's for that matter. And his response was, I mean no disrespect. I have respect for every activist who uses their platform to make a change. That's the beauty of freedom of speech and protest. However, calling America trash is harsh. You can say America is not perfect and that we have lots of work to do. This kind of goes back and forth for a while. It ends with him inviting Natasha to come out and that he would personally buy her a first class ticket to kind of check out some of the regimes in China, Russia, and Turkey, her choice as to which one she wanted to visit. He reminded her of Brittany Griner and her issues with comments she made around the US and how that same country made sure she came home. I will be honest, he gave examples and I understand why he used those examples. I also understand what she's saying is if you have freedom of speech, it doesn't mean that you should not be careful with your words because you should. And using the word trash is going to be offensive to many people here in the US. We know that Natasha Cloud has a political career that she's aiming for. So although many people and many articles are saying she's ignorant, she's this, she's that, and I go, she's very intelligent. She knows exactly what she's doing. She knows how to poke the bear. She knows what that will do and how it moves things forward. And at the end of the day, there's one thing someone told me a long time ago. They said, media attention, whether good or bad, still gets your name out in front of the masses. And at the end of the day, this little Twitter battle has done just that. I love to see where it's headed now, where she's saying, maybe at the end of the season we should sit down and talk. And accepting that olive branch from him to further understand where he's coming from and to share with him where she's coming from. I think the lesson in that is that at the end of the day, we all have different experiences and stories. As a Black woman, I know that there have been hundreds of years of slavery and things that people say we should let go of, we should get over. I think some of the things that Natasha brought up are correct. There have been over 200 people killed by police since the George Floyd murder. And I noticed people were saying, well, she didn't cite any sources. She didn't cite any information. If you do not know about George Floyd, if you do not know about slavery, that's an issue right there. We should all know our history and we should understand, just like Asians are marginalized, we have lots of different groups that are marginalized, and we should be open to the dialogue of hearing everyone's experiences and why they matter. One of the reasons I understood what Natasha was getting at was because that is my life. It's not something that I can avoid or not know. You do have to teach Black children how to deal with police officers because they can't spout off at the mouth like other races. They'll get shot. You can't forget about sitting in the living room and hearing my grandmother talk about slavery and how it was, how people were being raped, how families were being torn apart, how men were forced to breed so that they could get more free labor, and how publicly owned jails now, that labor, when we're incarcerating people, it creates issues. And I think that's what Natasha is talking about ultimately. And these are all issues that we've all heard before. And I think the best part is the two of them can sit down and talk about those things and actually share their experiences, have a dialogue, and talk about how to make sure marginalized groups can move forward and maybe team up, because that's what she was saying. Is you have so many different groups of people that are marginalized, and maybe if they come together, change can be had. I think they both have their hearts in the right places. It's just taking it off of social media, having those private conversations and dialogue so that they can actually come up with a game plan that works for everyone and that is respectful, um, for everyone as well. And I think that's kind of what Ennis is saying, and that's what Natasha is saying. So I wish them both well. I think they'll figure it out, and we'll get to kind of see how it plays out. At the end of the day, I think it'll go well. Now, I want to move forward to the All Star Snub. Let's change the energy up and talk about who's ticked off about All Star. Who dropped 43 points? 43 points. It was almost a record for the Atlanta Dream. So if you don't know what I'm talking about now, something's wrong. But after hearing the All-Star announcement and seeing who is chosen for each team, Ryan Howard decided that she wanted to remind everybody who the hell she is and what she brings to the league. She popped off a career high night of 43 points against the LA Sparks. She also threw in 4 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks on 14 of 20 shooting from the field, with 6 of 12 from beyond the arc. I don't know about you, but those are some monster numbers, definitely all-star numbers. She was 1 point away from breaking Betty Lennox's record in 2008 with 44 points when she came to the Dream. And if you have not heard of Betty Lennox, you need to look her up. She was a feisty guard that knew how to put up numbers at any point in time. But I loved hearing Howard speak up and say, she was ticked off about being snubbed from the All-Star game. And that is how she felt. And she just wanted to remind people who she was. And she wants some respect put on her name. And I have to say, that's how you get respect. I am interested because as she's coming to her second year in the league, she just won Rookie of the Year last year, and she has been playing out of her mind. She came into the league leading in field goal percentage. She's done a lot. She's become more dynamic in her second year. She's become more of an on-ball creator. She's attacking the basket more to get easy points versus her first year hanging out beyond the three-point line. She's really kind of bought into, I gotta go and get it. And I can't just sit here and wait for it to come to me. I love seeing that mindset. I absolutely love it because this 23-year-old has upped her game. Her 2-point attempts have come up. Her 2-point rate has come up. Her free throw rate has went up. All of those percentages are going up. And free throws and 2-point attempts, what that means is you're attacking the basket. And if she continues to attack the basket like that, she's going to put the Atlanta Dream in a great position. And I think the best part of it is she has an amazing coach in Tanisha Wright. Tanisha Wright is an amazing coach, came into Atlanta with a plan. She has really been telling her teammates this season, they have got to be consistent. And as she continues to tell her team that, as Ryan continues to up her game, it's going to bring everyone else in that organization up as well. It allows teammates to see that you have a little more to give. You can go and make things happen at times if you need to. You don't have to sit back and wait on things. And I think the best part is just watching them and seeing how they responded to Howard as she got the 43. Her teammates know who she is and what she brings to the table. So does her coach. As they continue to instill confidence in her, she's going to be a monster player. And hopefully this year's snub ensures that she never gets snubbed again because she is consistent and she continues to have nights like this 43-point night more consistently so that people do not have to, as she say, disrespect her name. So we talked a lot today, and there have been some subjects that have went all around the board. Everything from the New York Liberty and the Las Vegas Aces. We've talked about the All-Star announcements, the two teams who will win. Can't wait to hear what you think. We talked about the All-Star game, the coaches spotlight with James Ward going to the Toronto Raptors as an assistant coach under Draco, Ennis Cantor and Natasha Cloud, watching them resolve something publicly that honestly can teach us all a lesson. And then hearing how Ryan Howard's journey over the past 2 years, feeling as though she was snubbed with the All-Star, and how that's going to translate and probably fuel that young lady the rest of her career. And then finally, just looking at next week. It's a ton of games coming up. We got the All-Star game coming up this weekend. We have a special guest this next Friday, waiting to make sure we're going to get them. We were supposed to have them last week and surprise you guys. So we're hoping we have them this upcoming week. I promise you, you don't want to miss this. She's an amazing player. She hit the shot that was heard around the world in college. And she also is one of the few women that I know who won the dunk contest by blindfolding themselves while they dunked the ball. If you're a real baller, you know who that is. If you don't, tune in this Friday, and we are going to have one heck of a conversation with a legendary player to see where they are now, where their career has taken them, all the lessons that have allowed them to get to where they are now, and how they inspire other athletes who are aspiring to get to the league, get there. What they think the key things are around, getting to the league, standing out from other players, understanding what your coaches want. She's going to come in and drop some real gems. But until next week, I am signing off on behalf of James Scott and Michelle Snow. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.